panel is Ms. Shahina Siddiqui. Ms. Siddiqui is the founder and executive director of the Islamic Social Services Association, a charitable organization based in Winnipeg. She is also a member of the National Council of Canadian Muslims and actively involved in producing the United Against Terrorism booklet with the RCMP. Mrs. Siddiqui, welcome to the committee. We have 1 hour for this panel. I understand that you have an opening statement. Please begin.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and peace be with all of you. As was introduced, my name is Shahina Siddiqui and I have been very involved in the Muslim community for many decades. And in many capacities, but for the purpose of time, I will mention simply that I am the founding member and chair of Islamic Social Services Association, ISA, and ISA itself has incubated two institutes, the Canadian Muslim Leadership Institute and the Canadian Muslim Women's Institute. I immigrated to Canada in 1976 and have been working within the North American Muslim community for over 25 years. As a spiritual counselor, I have had the privilege to see up close for the past the progress of the Canadian Muslims community. I have seen it grow, I have seen it flourish, I have celebrated its many achievements as well as struggled with the many challenges, especially post 9/11. I chose Canada to be my home, where I have devoted my entire adult life working for justice, human rights, gender equality, and against racism. Canada is a place where I had the privilege to discover my faith and to practice it. As a Canadian, I am invested in the security, well-being, and progress of Canada, and to guard the 7 freedoms our nation is built on. Like our fellow Canadians, Canadian Muslims aspire to make our nation a beacon for human rights, human equality, and human values of justice, harmonious coexistence, and to build a society that is compassionate, inclusive, and is governed by rule of law, and cherishes civil liberties for all its citizens, regardless of race, creed, religion, and culture. Canadian Muslims are not a monolithic group. We are diverse culturally, ethnically, linguistically, and in our religious understanding and observance. Muslims have been in Canada since before Confederation. In my province of Manitoba, Muslim families from Turkish and Lebanese descent are 3rd and 4th generation Canadians. My son and parents are buried in Canada. This is where my second son was born and raised, and his 2 sons were born. This is our home, and it is deeply disconcerting and hurtful to have my loyalty to Canada questioned, my faith derided, and my civil human rights threatened due to geopolitical concerns, criminal acts by those claiming to be my co-religious, or to be acting in the name of and inspired by teachings of my faith. The security concern Canada faces today from the likes of ISIS and Al-Qaeda impact Canadian Muslims as much, if not more, than they do my fellow Canadians. We are in the difficult situation of having to preserve our faith values from the hate ideologies of these terrorist organizations and to defend our faith from the onslaught of religious bigotry by Islamophobes. Yes, Canada is facing a new threat today in terms of some of our youth being influenced and recruited by an ideology of hate. But for us to be able to successfully purge this evil from our midst, we need to work together and not treat Canadians Muslims as part of the problem, rather part of the solution. Canadians need to come together and bring all stakeholders and experts together and work in the spirit of partnership and multiculturalism to set forth short-term and long-term goals, to prevent radicalization, to violence, and to help and rehabilitate those who may have fallen prey to ideology of violent extremism. We have enough knowledge from such terrorist and gang-like threats like the Nazis, the neo-Nazis, IRA, KKK, to name a few, to help us address the latest threat. The similarities of brainwashing and recruitment techniques of all these groups make it possible for us to come up and implement a comprehensive strategy to prevent violent radicalization and extremism, and also to address it once it has occurred. ISA has developed, which is my organization, such a plan. Please note that the vulnerability of some young people, or those who are otherwise impressionable, or to being radicalized to the point of violence, is rooted in factors that affect their families and the circumstances that make the whole family vulnerable. Stabilizing the family and strengthening integration of Muslim families within the broader multi-ethnic Muslim as well as the wider community is what ISA is all about. My personal experience and much solid social science research all support the family counseling approach. The underlying philosophy of family counseling is the key to de-radicalization. Unfortunately, the language in which this phenomena of Muslim youth radicalization towards extremist violence is being framed is extremely problematic and counterproductive. These are Canadian youth, and we need to have a made-in-Canada solution. Demonization of Islam and giving into our stereotypes of Muslims will only exacerbate the situation. We need to adopt a prejudice-free and a fully informed lens to this issue of radicalization to first prevent it and then to eradicate it. As Professor Bisma Numoni and Lon Dawson mentioned in their piece in today's Globe and Mail, the government should acknowledge that using the law may seem like a quick and cheap fix, but ignoring the need for a more sociological approach will cost more in the long run. I hope to give more details as to how we do this in the answers to your specific questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And colleagues, during the course of the last two panels, some senators didn't really get an opportunity to ask their questions in depth. So I'm going to start a procedure for the course of the balance of the afternoon if each senator would keep themselves to one question unless it really carries on to something else. So
Okay.
Senator Mitchell.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Ms. Siddiqui, for being here and for your comments. My question is directed at your point that it comes down to family counseling. How do you do it? How do we fund it? How do we make sure that enough of it's available?
Thank you. I am actually just coming out of a very...
Yeah, but very short. They're very short.
Very intense training by Hayat, Germany. Daniel Kohler was in Winnipeg training us in exactly that. We are looking at this German model, and we are going to adapt it to a Canadian context, which seems to be closest to our context. When you are counseling Muslims, whether it is even in family counseling, marriage counseling, you name it, in my 30 years of experience, you need to get the family involved. Family, in this case, in radicalization, are actually the first respondents. They know what's going on. They see the change in the individual. They have concerns. And so when we work with the whole unit of the family, that is when we are most successful in at least preventing. And I think we also need, we've been talking a lot about prevention and intervention, but there is another stage which is pre-prevention, where the education is extremely important, and putting into context what these individuals, who they are listening to, what they are doing. For example, if your child is on the internet, because that's where we see most of the radicalized literature and videos available to these youth, family is the first point of contact that will tell us that will be able to help us assess it. And they are also the ones who are emotionally connected to this individual. So just as we do trying to take young people out of gangs, we get the family involved, it would be the same kind of process. Unfortunately, I'll give you my example. Our Islamic Social Services Association gets absolutely no funding from the government. I volunteer my time as executive director so that we can keep our work going. In Germany, it is funded by the government. And there are many different aspects to it and many different partners that we bring to it.
Thank you.
Senator White.
Thank you very much. I have one question, two parts. I know. It's not fair. Thank you very much for being here today, and I do appreciate you taking the time. We're talking a lot about extremist viewpoints and people expressing them and engaging others and causing them to act in a way that may not be their norm. Have you actually seen this occur? And if so, how have you handled the passing of information on to the authorities or to leaders in your own community?
First of all, there is very little capacity within Muslim communities across Canada to deal with this issue. They are not trained. In my case, I have assessed the cases where I had to inform the RCMP. I have done so. Where I felt that it was pre-radicalization stage, where it was just big talk and questions, we have addressed it accordingly. So I think the assessment process is critical when the case comes to you, when parents come to you, when the individual comes to you, and that is where we are hoping to build capacity. There were a lot of questions raised about what is the Muslim community doing. We are not trained in policing. We are not security experts, but we are the connection. And that is where we need to focus, is to build that capacity. Not every Muslim will be able to do this work, so we need to build teams within the communities that would work with the RCMP, that would work with CSIS, that would work, and have this partnership built and established so that we can do work which is productive and effective, rather than right now what I see is everybody has a piece of the puzzle, but it has not been put together. And we are all struggling because it is a new phenomena for us. So I think partnerships are absolutely important, but partnerships that are based on mutual trust and respect.
Follow-up question, Mr. Chair, is that what you said?
Very quick.
Okay. Thank you very much. You just made a statement, actually. I didn't have a question until you said that, but we haven't seen this before. Why haven't we seen this with Al-Qaeda and others? Why haven't we seen this before? Why is it now and not those other times when we've seen this extremism happening?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We are also looking into it, but I think there are a lot of conditions that are available now that were not available before. First, the internet. The fast exchange of information is one thing. Number two, the geopolitical conditions, the wars in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, has given a lot of fodder to extremists who would like to paint the West as the enemy of Muslims. We were not paying too much attention both in our community and from the larger Canadian community to the impact of secondhand trauma on our community and on our youth especially. Because I do counseling, I see this all the time. When a child, for example, I'll give you a very simple, I'm a practical person. A simple example is if during the night the child has watched Al Jazeera, for example, with his parents and seen bombs dropped on his village where his family may still reside. He sees his mother cry herself to bed. The father is upset and angry because he feels he can't do anything. This child in the morning goes to school. Right? He is feeling the grief and he's feeling the helplessness. And there is no one to talk to. Our guidance counselors are not trained to. And he is told by his parents, do not talk about this. We don't want you to be profiled. We don't want you to get into trouble. And so this grief and this helplessness is internalized. He will try to find venues where he or she can go and find answers for this. The community, for ourselves, we were not opening up forums and asking youths to come and talk and give them that psychological counseling to help them channel their anger, their grief, and their helplessness in a productive, constructive way. So we were each, I think, failing at our own ends. And we don't even have, and we always think of trauma as something that you are personally have been, experienced. But secondhand trauma is very, very real. And it is happening and it is there. It's the same thing like people who get kids into gangs, they have their radars up. These recruiters have their radars up. They are watching where this kid is going on, which websites he's accessing. They see the pain, they see the anger, they see the website, and so they respond. And it is radicalization doesn't happen overnight. It is a process. As the speakers before have said, there is very little understanding and training, whether it's school counselors, trauma counselors, in general, about this process. There are very few experts around the world in this process. But we do have the knowledge, as I said. We have the knowledge from other groups. We have the knowledge from other experiences. It's a matter of pulling that all together. And really, really, as I said, have a strategic, comprehensive plan where we are all, because these are our kids. We don't want them going and dying in foreign land. We don't want them committing acts of violence. And these are promising futures. So I think that's where the partnership needs to come in.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thanks,
Chair.
Senator. If we can keep our questions relatively concise and our responses concise as we move along. Senator Bayak.
Very much, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Several witnesses before the committee have expressed concern that the organizations leading the call for a counter-radicalization narrative are themselves linked with radical groups. And I note that the National Council of Canadian Muslims, on whose board you sit as a director, was formerly known as the Canadian Council on American Islamic Relations. The website states that the Canadian Council on American Islamic Relations was a fully independent and a distinct organization from the American group, but in 2003, an affidavit by Ms. Shahina Khan, chair and founder of CAIR Canada, noted that CIRC uses the trademarks CAIR and CAIR Canada and the name Council on American Islamic Relations under license from CAIR United States. Under the terms of license, CAIR United States has direct control over the character and quality of all activities of CIRC, including the use of trademark and trade name. The information is relevant because I believe you know that CAIR is an unindicted co-conspirator in a successful terrorist financing case in the United States connecting it with Hamas. CAIR is also listed as a terrorist organization by the United Arab Emirates. So the question I have is, how can we trust community organizations to help us develop a counter-radicalization narrative when they themselves are affiliated with organizations with known ties to terrorism?
First, let me make it clear that I'm the most senior board member of the NCCM, and I have been part of it since its inception. When you talk about CAIR in USA, it is an independent organization from NCCM. When we started off, the name was CAIR Can, and we soon realized that it was confusing people as to our mandate in Canada. The CAIR USA has, and you say unindicted co-conspirators, I really don't know what that word means, because if they're unindicted, they are not guilty. So there is a lot of stuff that is out there, and I would advise this respectful committee is to give me the time to respond, because a lot of accusations were made, a lot of slander and innuendos were thrown around right here, and I'm very sad about that, because if I had known, I would have come prepared to respond to each and every of those allegations. So please give me the time to respond, and I will respond to all of you in writing to all those accusations made, because I don't believe in speaking from the top of my head without having evidence to back what I'm going to say. Suffice it to say that CAIR, that NCCM is one of the leading voices in human rights and civil liberties and advocacy on behalf of Muslims. It's a respected organization. I am part of it, and I'm proud to be part of it. When it comes to CAIR USA, if you go on their website, they have answered in detail this accusation that has been made by them. They have also responded to United Arab Emirates in detail, and I think their name has been removed from that list. You can check into that. But all the responses are there. So it's best to speak to people who can respond to it in the best way. But as far as NCCM is concerned, we will respond to you in detail.
Yes, supplemental chair. After that many years on the board of directors, I'm surprised you wouldn't have those answers at the ready. They're simple questions. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Could you answer that?
Yeah. If I was knowing that I was being called here as a board member of NCCM, I was invited as president of Islamic Social Services Association because of the handbook that we have done and also because of the work that we are doing in this field. I also sit on the RCMP Commissioners Advisory Committee, and I also sit on the D Division's Advisory Committee. I'm also chair of the Islamic History Month in Canada. I'm also board member of the Canadian Muslims with Disabilities. I also sit on the Roundtable of Winnipeg Police and Roundtable, but I'm not here speaking on behalf of all of them, but on the work that we are doing as ISSA.
Thank you.
Senator Dagenet.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give you a moment to put on your earpiece. Can you hear me now? You can hear the interpretation. I have a two-part question, which is fairly straightforward. In your opinion, what's most dangerous for Muslim Canadians? Is it Islamophobe demonstrations by some Canadians, which you mentioned, or would it be the actions of radicalized Muslims? And how are you experiencing what we are calling the cohabitation between peaceful Muslims and radical Muslims hidden in Canada?
It was a twofold question. One, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. If you could repeat the first.
Oui, en fait, ce que je vous disais dans ma première...
Yes, in the first part of the question, I was asking what's more dangerous for Canadians? Is it a few Canadians making statements against Muslims, or is it the actions of the radicalized Muslims?
Thank you. I think they both feed into each other, and that is why we need to look at it. I have watched so many videos in the last 4 days of training of how they are recruiting our youth. And if you look at those videos, and if you look at their propaganda material, and if you look at their magazines, they will tell you that they exactly zero in on these issues. Number one, you cannot be a Canadian and you cannot be a Muslim. It's a dichotomy. You can't be a good Muslim in Canada. Number one, they focus on that. Then they go on to tell our youth, these are the reasons why you cannot. Look at them, how they are attacking your faith. Look how they are demonizing your faith, how they are stigmatizing the Muslim community, how they won't allow Muslim women to wear the hijab. And this literally a laundry list of things that they use in those propaganda material. Then they turn not only on the Muslim community in general and saying, look, they are not doing anything for you. They are not doing anything for the brothers and sisters in Syria or in Afghanistan or in Iraq. So those are the ways in which they are reaching and trying to reach some of the vulnerable youth or at-risk youth. So that is why it is very important that when we are doing de-radicalization, that we look at the entire picture of what's causing it. Islamophobic messages and extreme media is playing a role in it because it is legitimizing what these extremists are saying in the minds of the at-risk youth. Most will be able to process it. Most will be able to go to elders and community leaders and talk it through and will get the answers. Some will not, because one of the stages of radicalization is the isolation, right, of this individual. We have used a lot of the term self-radicalization. I can tell you nobody radicalizes themselves. They may initiate radicalization, but they need a group of people around them. They need a community. And right now, that community is being provided on the internet of extremists, which surround them and answer their questions. And every time there is a doubt, they have a response for it. So in order to counter that, we have to show our youth, we have to convince our youth, we have to show them that they are part of Canada, that Canada is their country, that they can be both loyal Canadians and devout Muslims, that there is no dichotomy. and that's the message we want to go across.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Senator Day.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I think it's a pretty well-known strategy that if you want to build up support for one side, if the one side against another, whether it's a nation or one army and another army, you have to build up a hatred towards the other side, to a fear of the other side, and your comment that you resent the fact that your freedom of religion is being taken away from you made me think about just what's happening. I have a grave concern that we're going to be seeing more retaliation. We're going to be seeing more bullet holes in mosques and mosques burned. And it's because of what ISIS is doing in beheading people on the internet. And this is going to escalate, because as soon as your community starts seeing this activity going on, which has been triggered by something happening way off somewhere else, more and more young people are going to join up to go fight for the jihad, and it's going to be more and more difficult for your community. Your community is going to react to the other communities within your area, and it's going to escalate. And what are we doing to stop this? Because we've got to stop it now, or it's going to get out of control.
We have to stop it now because we have the experience of Japanese internment. We did that to Japanese Canadians, right, out of fear. I hope this is not going to go there. But also, Muslims have made it very clear, Canadian Muslims, that ISIS does not speak for us. ISIS is rejected as a terrorist organization, and that is the reason it brings me to the language that we are using to contextualize this whole phenomena. For example, calling them jihadis or somebody that they are doing jihad is actually playing right into their hands, because they can turn around, and they do, saying to our young people, look, even they recognize that this is jihad. Now you have to know the meaning of jihad. Jihad comes from the root Arabic word jihad, struggle and striving to do good. This is the meaning of jihad. And in the military sense, yes, we are not a pacifist faith. We are allowed to go to war, but only in self-defense. This is the message that is being drowned out both by the extremists and by Islamophobes. They want to push this. So the language is extremely important in how we are framing this whole dialogue and discussion. And I know that it has become very... people are taking it very easy, but I think language has an impact, right? So we want to we want to call a spade a spade. Terrorism is not jihad. It is terrorism. It's evil. And we need to purge it. At the same time, we need to tell our youths and our community that majority of Canadians are not Islamophobic. They are not racist. They may not be well informed, and so our job is to inform and educate and reach out. In our organization, we reach out to 5 communities in Canada, the First Nations, because we have a lot in common with them. We reach out to the Japanese community, to the Mennonite community, to other interfaith and cultural groups, and bring them together to have conversations. We reach out to the RCMP is in our mosque in a regular basis. They come to our events. I just have to pick up the phone and call my CO for anything, and he's always available. Our police chief, the same thing. First black chief in Canada, amazing human being who has reached out to our community as well. These are the positive examples that we want our youth to know, so that they are not taken in by the hate. But I can't do that alone. We need partners. We need our political leadership to show leadership in that regard. We need our civil society to be working with us. We need research so that we can have stats and information. So every sector of civil society has to be a partner on this. We have to look at this issue in a holistic way. Because if you're just going to take religion and just hammer on that, guess what? It's not going to work. Because this is not the only way, this is not the only reason or the cause for it, because Islam is a religion of peace. But it can be a partner in this, is getting the right messaging out. Look at their videos, they are so slick. We have shown them to expert in communication in Canada and United States, and they say we can't top it. This is a Hollywood production. And then what do we do in response? We go out and talk to community, right? It's so, our response is so benign compared to what these people are able to do, the finance and the money they have.
It's the ISIS.
The ISIS.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Well,
look at their videos.
We were told, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we were told earlier that ISIS is sending out 90,000 messages a day.
Yes.
Could you be sending out 90,000 messages from the Muslim community saying, we don't adopt that, we don't approve that, if you had the money to do it?
Not with the resources. One thing else that was brought up, I would like to emphasize, is when people are talking about mosque, perhaps they confuse them with churches, which are based on membership. Our mosques don't have membership. Anybody can come to a mosque to pray. Right? Mm-hmm. The mosques are open. We don't stand on the door and say, you're a member. So for them to say we should monitor the mosques, it's an impossible task, number one. Number two, mosque is just four walls. Anybody comes and sits and talks. We can control the material that comes into the mosques. We have procedures and guidelines for imams. We will not let anything go through that is problematic. But we are not police. We are not set up to be able to respond to every Joe on the street who decides that he is going to lead or going to get to a group of youth and whatnot. So we need help in that area as well. But we have to recognize that, and it's run by volunteers, by the way. Not a single mosque has an executive director. Many of the mosques have volunteer imams. The board is all, so the infrastructure, the finances, all that you will need to come up with comprehensive way of dealing with it and being partner is not there.
Do you, now I'll finish with this, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to get an answer to my initial question, is do you have the resources in personnel and funds within the Muslim community to counter the communication that's coming from ISIS that's developing this war against Muslims?
Absolutely not. As I said, I have one staff member. And Islamic Social Services Association is the only social service organization that is helping community all across Canada in this area, and I have one staff member. I volunteer my time. The training that we did with Daniel, we could not afford to bring him in till CAIR Canada offered to do that, and he offered to do the training without cost. This is how we are struggling. The strategic plan that I talked to you about puts everything together. We have approached the federal government through Joyce Bateman, our MP from Manitoba, to help us in that area. I am willing to volunteer all my time. The scholars are willing to volunteer their time. But when it comes to doing the medium, by which we will reach not only our youth, but we will also reject and counterbalance what's coming out. Which is critical, absolutely. We don't have it. We don't have the resources to be able to do that, except for our personal commitment and passion for it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Colleagues, I'd like to maybe ask a question if I could, and I just want to refer to the United Against Terrorism, the collaborative effort towards a secure and inclusive and just Canada that you were very much involved in, I understand. And I think there's an area that I think should be explored here, and I think it should be part of a public conversation. It was referred to earlier today, and I think it's been referred to a number of times over the course of our representation that's come before the committee. And that's the question of the individuals who have been named as a spokespeople for the, and I think it's on page 13 if I can find it. Yeah, 13 on the, a group of suggested scholars who demonstrate a keen knowledge of the current geopolitical environment. And then research has shown that quite a number of them have been involved, indirect or directly involved, with international and national associations that really quite honestly one would look at and question just exactly what are they doing and who are they and what are they involved with. And also some very, very, very extreme statements made by a number of them. Now, people can make mistakes, I accept that, but very extreme statements. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, with, an important document such as this, that we would have individuals being named who raise this question. Because we've had individuals here on numerous occasions again, speaking out, saying, look, some people are coming out as spokespeople for the Muslim community, yet at the same time actually do have some extreme views. And so we're getting almost a double talk in some cases. And perhaps you can explain that to us in respect to this particular document, because I think it begs the question.
Sure. If you look at the question to which this was answered is, whom do we consult to gain an accurate understanding of our faith? And these were questions that were raised by 200 community members in a town hall meeting, and the panel was answering them. Our idea to put them all in a handbook is because when I talked to my colleagues across the country, they said these are questions that the youth are raising. Right? So they're asking for references to where we can go to suggest us some names. All these people that are mentioned here, I know them personally. Okay? I can tell you that I don't know which research you are indicating to, but if you are going to chop up and take out of context something somebody said, we can prove anything. Right? If you apply a cut and paste thing. The other thing is, I may not agree with all their views, you may not agree with all my views, but in Canada we have the freedom of expression where we can express those views and we can counter those views. So I would really like to see that research where those connections were made. Now, when we're talking a geopolitical situation, you do want to talk to people who do have a geopolitical view, who do have some connections, and a lot was said about MAC, one organization, right, Muslim Association of Canada. A lot was said about other mainstream organizations, and this is what is extremely problematic, because these are people that are respected, that are knowledgeable. I have heard them speak. I have read their work. Some of them are professors in Canadian universities. These are people who are invited all over North America and Europe to speak, to consult with. So I really, the problem is when people have very little knowledge of what Islam is and what Islamic terminology means, and then they juxtapose that ignorance on the faith itself and on the situation that we are in, we will have claims made that you and I, as critical minds as we have, we need to look into them. We need to get more information. If you can prove to me, or anybody can, and you I mean in a general sense, that any one of them has promoted violence or an ideology that comes close to hate, I am the first one that would remove their names from this handbook. I will put a disclaimer on it. But I can only go on evidence. I cannot go on hearsay. And one of the things that is also, I would say it is strategic, because if you can go after the leadership, respected, legitimate leadership of a community, you break that community. You make it weak. I know that there are people who are extremist and have extremist views that I do not agree with. They have been called out on it. We have refused to bring in speakers that we fundamentally disagree with their views. Anything that harms Canada or is any way a threat to Canada is a threat to me, right? So I would respectfully submit to you that please do look into this if this is a concern, and bring it to my attention as well. We have done due diligence in putting these names out. I do not. There are people on the internet. There is an entire, hate mail that comes to me every day in my office. Right? I get threats all the time. Why? Because I dare to speak up for Islam and Muslims, or I dare to speak up for Canada on both ends of the spectrum. But I don't let that cloud my critical judgment, because it is essential, as I said, that we continue to stand up for our 7 freedoms.
And I appreciate what you've just said here. And I would just conclude this is that, when you and we will correspond with you in respect to this one. But when you see statements that indicate that, for an example, authorizing being part of an organization that talks about authorizing the killing of American troops in Iraq, things of this nature are
Absolutely.
really concerning, I think, to everybody on the committee if that was the case.
Yeah.
And that's just one or two examples.
Yeah.
And so, Senator White, do you want a second question? Senator White?
Thank you very much. Thanks again for being here. When this handbook was first coming out, I was under the understanding the RCMP had withdrawn from the handbook. Is that correct?
No, they have not withdrawn from the handbook. I'll just tell you what my
Sure.
communication with them was. The night before, I got an email from our CEO saying, Shahina, there is an issue. I said, okay. He says, I'll talk to you in the morning. He did call me later that morning when we were going to have the press conference and said, and I want to quote him correctly, headquarters has concern, and I said, so we cannot come to the press conference. They were actually printing the handbooks to bring because we didn't have the money to print the handbooks. And he said, and I said, what about the handbooks? He said, sorry, I can't bring them. We can't send them either. That's all that we know about it. Then later on, next day, I get a call from the media that says that RCMP has put out a statement saying that they have concerns with tone of certain part of the handbook, which was also not very clear as to what that reason was. The division at that time did not know anything about that statement. And of course, media started calling from all over. So to this day, it has not been communicated to me because my response, and our statement is on the record, the response was, it is a free country. People are entitled to their opinion. The disclaimer is already on the handbook on the back of the first page, saying that the 3 organizations that have collaborated on this are only responsible for their section. Right, so it was obvious that RCMP was not and I was not responsible for the RCMP section either. I can tell you that for 14 months, this handbook and the drafts were going to and fro. Till the midnight of the printing, I was working on, there was one objection to a quote from Pierre Trudeau on the handbook from the communications department at HQ. We removed that and we put the vision of RCMP on it. So I am actually quite clueless as to why this was done. RCMP knows that we are distributing. This handbook has gone into second printing because it gives parents red flags to look for and so forth. Europe has asked for it. I'm going to Vienna and Pristina on the invitation of embassy to present on de-radicalization and radicalization and this handbook. It's gone as far as Russia and Nigeria, so I don't know why and what the issue is.
So if I may, they haven't asked to be removed from the book?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Baird.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I just wanted to say that the comments I get from constituents all the time is that we all have to stop being offended, stop being thin-skinned, and work together. They're tired of hearing excuses. If 21 Christians were beheaded by Jews, they'd be called radical. extremist Jews. And if pilots were burned in cages by a Christian, they'd be called radical, violent Christians. We have to work together, stop being so thin-skinned, and find a solution to a worldwide problem. They declare themselves the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria and the Muslim Brotherhood. And as Senator Lang pointed out, their plans are very clear. So what would you answer to people who are legitimately concerned not about you or me or Jews or Christians, but about Canadians in general who are sick of the fighting and want some action?
Which fighting in ISIS and Iraq?
Between ourselves, between everybody being offended because somebody says something they perceive as nasty or untrue, even though it's documented and clear for people to read. Canadians don't want to hear all that. They're tired of us being offended and thin-skinned, and they want us to do something about people who are threatening to blow up malls and who are burning pilots in cages and who are beheading Christians.
Right. I would say to that, on average in a week, I speak to 3 groups of Canadians, and I speak all across Canada and North America, and I get emails from everywhere. Canadians are as concerned about the loss of innocent life, whether it is done by ISIL, whether it is done by Al-Qaeda, or whether it is done by all other terrorist groups. Okay, the number one targets of these groups are Muslims. 70,000 Pakistanis have been killed by terrorist attacks. Right? The same numbers goes across board. So it is not about Muslim versus Canadians or Canadian Muslim versus Muslims. It is humanity versus terrorism. When you talk about offense is a very mild word to use. What we are dealing with is slander. We are dealing with defamation. We are dealing with accusations made without a person's reputation is all one has. So when I am called a terrorist supporter or somebody who caters to that, you are attacking me at a very fundamental level, my employment. I have 2 Canadian grandkids. How do I tell them that your own country, your own people are turning on you? I don't have the heart to tell them that the Canada I chose to be my home and I will defend to my last breath is attacking my faith because of my community in general, because of the act of we don't do that to any other community. 3 Muslim youths were killed by a self-proclaimed atheist, and if you go on his Facebook, you will see his anti-religious rant. Nobody called it terrorism. A individual belonging to a fundamental Christian group who killed 4 of our Mounties, nobody called it a Christian terrorist. This is what we are facing. We are not saying don't call an ace an ace, but what we are saying is, at least before you say that, get your facts straight, right? Get the information, because otherwise we will tear each other apart, as you were saying. We have to have the trust in our democratic values that we can overcome this evil with those values, not by ignoring those values. That's my submission to all of you, is don't give in to the fear, don't give in to the propaganda, just as I tell my youth, don't give it to the fear and the propaganda of these. They are someone who hates humanity. And all of us are human beings. But if I am made to feel as a Canadian Muslim, a second-class citizen, I will speak up. Because if I don't, I would be doing a disservice to the democratic values that I chose to be my home, right? The country to be my home.
Supplemental chair, it's important. Christians and Jews have been offended and slandered for millennia. It's got nothing to do with that. As our witness told us last week, being offended is no excuse to kill. Pure and simple.
Do you think they are killing because they are offended? No, they are killing because they want the land, they want the money, they want to control and to govern. They want to implement their hate ideology. They're not doing it because they're offended?
Journalists were killed in France because they were offended.
Who said that?
Journalists.
Senator
Thank you.
Senator Desjardins.
Chair, I have a last question. The committee has heard the concerns from Muslim Canadians about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and other influence in the Gulf, funding radical Islamic preachers and also providing funding to Canadian organizations. Do you believe it's appropriate for Canadian mosques in BC or Ottawa or university organization to be receiving foreign funding with string attached? Or could this be contributing to radicalism?
It's absolutely a very good question. We've been struggling with this since the 1980s. I can tell you that my own organization were offered $3 million and we refused, even though I had not a penny in my account at that time when I started the organization, because this is a Canadian organization and we do not need funding from anywhere else. The same thing about our mosques in Manitoba. We were offered money from Libya when we made our first mosque. We refused it. Right? Now, are there some mosques that have accepted money from overseas because it was legal to do so? Right? So if we want to curtail them, then we have to make it illegal for funding, but not only for Muslims, for all groups, right? That you cannot raise funds abroad. That would be my response. But this is a message that has been going out to all communities. When we do our roundtables, when we have our conferences, we are telling organizations, do not accept funding from overseas, even if it sounds kosher, because there are strings attached to it. And we want to be a Canadian Muslim community, Canadian Muslim organization. I do share your concerns. And to give you an example, I was perhaps the first one in Canada to stand up to the translations of the Quran that were coming from Saudi Arabia. I told all the mosques in Winnipeg to remove those Qurans from our shelves. We will not accept them. When I was at conferences in other communities, I said the same thing, because for me, that even the translation that was in English was problematic. And thank God that we have the Arabic text that it could be compared with. The way the women were being treated in the mosque was not a Canadian phenomena, it was a Saudi phenomena of excluding women. I'm the first person that spoke up against it in a handbook for all Muslim organizations saying how to make mosque more Muslim friendly and to reclaim our heritage. So just to show you that I'm not the only one, there are many others within the communities, but we are not outside the community. Some people that you hear from are sitting on the sidelines and armchair intellectuals, I would say. We are those people who are in the trenches. We are trying to make the difference from within. And you know that change is only good when it comes from within. When people understand why they need to change, why they need to ignore certain things and influences, and so this is what we are doing, and we need help. Of course, in doing that, but we will continue to do that, even if even the strategic plan, which requires a lot of investment, I'm not going to put it on the sideline because the federal government didn't come through for us in the funding. We will do it. God will provide, because this is just too serious to ignore. I cannot have another young Canadian being led down this route of violent extremism. I cannot see the tears of these mothers anymore. I just cannot. And this has to stop. And this has to go beyond name calling. We need concrete steps. We need concrete cooperation. We need concrete plan to do this as a team. Just please do not treat Muslim Canadians as if they are the enemy, because we are not.
Just before we hear colleagues, I just have one question, if I could, just following up on Senator Desjardins. In respect to we talked about the financial assistance coming in from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, other interests. It's just not one particular country. I understand there's a number of countries involved. And you're a member of the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Do you know how many mosques have received money from these interests in the country?
I don't have the figures.
Can we get them?
I think so. I think all you have to do is to go to the tax department where they file their taxes. You would know.
Okay, colleagues, it's our other panelists are here. I'd like to thank our witness for appearing. We appreciate the time and the effort that you put into it. I know that at times this is a difficult conversation, but it's a conversation obviously long overdue, and we appreciate you appearing before us.